Hey everyone, it's Brandon Lee, host of the podcast Escaping Rock Bottom. This podcast episode is inspired by Molina Healthcare. We have a special guest on with us today, Dr. Carrazco. He is the founder of Los Feliz Care Centers and Happy Kids Pediatrics here in the Valley. Dr. Carrazco, it's good to have you here with us.
Thank you so much, Brandon, for having me on your podcast. Appreciate it.
Dr. Carrazco, I love for our viewers to kind of get to know who you are as a person, kind of your background. Where were you born and raised?
Thank you so much. Well, I was born in Mexicali, which is only 3.5 hours from here. And I was born and raised there until I was 17 years of age. And then we immigrated to the States in 1971, which is actually the year that I met my wife when she was only 15 and I was 17. We got married and now we dated for 5 years and now we've been married for 47 years.
Did you meet her when you came to the U.S.?
Yeah, I met her when I came to the United States to San Fernando Valley, which is just north of L.A.
That's where I'm born and raised.
Is that right?
Yeah, I was born and raised in Southern California, Los Angeles, and Orange
LA.
County.
Yeah. My wife used to live in San Fernando Valley, like I said, in San Fernando Valley. And then that's where we moved to. And back then, I mean, I had just completed a bachelor's at a very young age, at almost 18, 17. And then when I came to the States, I worked first as a gas station attendant. And I also picked grapes, with, believe it or not, all these things that were happening with, the person who created, Chicanos por la Causa, but what's the name? The big leader, of a Mexican leader, for the farm workers. And but anyway, I worked picking grapes, and and then I had another job. But I knew that I didn't want to do this forever. So and I was kind of good in school, so I decided to take some pre-med classes. They used to call it junior college. Now they call them community colleges.
I started at community college in Orange County. Yeah, I went to community college for my first year.
Yeah, I went to Northridge Valley College. And anyway, so then eventually I have two brothers who unfortunately passed away, but one of them was in medical school, and he just kind of like convinced me to go to medical school. So I went to medical school in Guadalajara. I graduated there in 1976. Then I did my internship and residency there for a couple of years, and then I was able to come here to the States and took my boards and passed all my boards, and then I went on to just the year before, the 6 months before I completed my studies, I married my wife. Then we both moved to New Orleans. I went to Tulane University in New Orleans. That's where I did my 4 years through internship and residency in pediatrics. Then subsequent to that, I moved to California, and I went to University of California, Irvine, where I did a fellowship in pediatrics, pulmonary, and critical care. And pretty much that's ever since. I had at one point California license, Nevada license, and also Arizona license, of course, to practice medicine. I was able to pass my boards and certify myself and everything. And I worked primarily my first 17, 18 years of my career. I worked doing pediatrics critical care, which basically means not neonatal care, which is different. No, it's only the little premature babies, which I did too. But I would just primarily take care of kids that had issues with like near drowners, had traumas, severe automobile accidents, that kind of a thing, And so I loved it, but it was a difficult time. It was very time consuming.
Take me to the year 1999. Okay, because it's a big year for you, 1999. You and your wife, obviously living together, you're in the medical field. There had to have been a need, right? There had to have been a need because in 1999, you created Happy Kids Pediatrics. Why? Why did you decide to get into that space and build truly what is now a huge, huge clinic here in Arizona? But what inspired you to start?
Well, in 1999, I had originally come here to this part of Arizona, to work with somebody else, but I didn't like his particularly, his style and way of going about it. And I've always had the interest in the urge of what am I going to do? And I want to do something where, that is where I can have control. If I don't want to charge patients, I don't have to charge them, and we'll do it as we can. And I started basically My wife and I and my kids, believe it or not, that was sat at the table and said, "Oh, well, how are we going to name this?" And we started throwing in names until we decided Happy Kids. We like Happy Kids Pediatrics, and that's all the name. The name came out of us, out of our, one table, my two kids, my two older kids, my wife and I. And it was cool. We thought it was a pretty catchy name, and that's how we started it. And I started, going to the houses. I mean, I was a fully licensed doctor, but I was doing home visits and everything for a while. Fortunately, it didn't take very long. Within 3 months, I already had an actual office, and then in 6 to 9 months, I was able to buy a building, where we can, and then we started growing and went from one office to now 8 offices on the pediatric side and 7 offices in the adult care, which is Feliz care centers. But I knew that there was the need. Every time there are so many Hispanic people here, and yet, unfortunately, there aren't that many Hispanic doctors. There are some of us, but not that many. Not in relation to the amount of Hispanic population that there are here.
Yeah, there's more Hispanic population than there are Hispanic doctors, ratio-wise,
exactly,
compared to any other race here. And so I think it's really fascinating because there is a need, and you go into the pediatric space. What have you seen as one of the biggest concerns within the Latino community and within the family system, especially with children, and making sure that they're getting to the doctors, that they're going to get their checkups, that they're getting their vaccinations, that they are staying healthy? Because, doctor, from my own journalism background, being here for 11 years, doing a lot of reporting, is the fact that in the Latino community, moms and dads are often working 2 to 3 jobs to put food on the table, to keep a roof over their head. And sometimes healthcare is an afterthought.
Oh, by all means. I mean, you just said it right on the money, is what it is. First of all, we Hispanics, we all have a different idiosyncrasies. We just have some, old beliefs, and some of them, when we come to this country, it's like, it's not just the food that is different, which by now we have tacos everywhere, but nevertheless, it is more to it than that. There's the way the system works, and sometimes they're not aware of it, and have misconceptions. The healthcare has been also somewhat limited to these people, and because I guess either the funds were there or people were not being get to. They were not being found to be told, what's available for them. And I needed to tell them that first of all, I tried to understand their idiosyncrasy. There are a lot of bad habits. Like, for example, we have patients that just don't show up, or people that are always late, and you cannot just you cannot just ignore those people. You just have to eventually re-educate them and be constant at it, so they can eventually realize how important it is.
Yeah, making healthcare a priority.
Go ahead.
Making that a priority within their families, because you're also dealing with cultural issues. And, please do correct me if I'm wrong, but, from my experiences, within the Latino community, men don't cry. Men don't show the emotion, right? And sometimes the men are the last ones to go see a doctor.
It is, indeed, that and more, but in good thing, God, and now the new generations are somewhat different by all means. Yes. I think they're just catching up with the different idiosyncrasies, different way of thinking, and now they realize that by all means, which is something we have been trying to teach everyone, that the best medicine is the preventive medicine. Not when you just already so sick that you have to go to the emergency room. But we can prevent all of that. And we can I always tell people, look how old I am. But I feel like I'm extremely active. I get up in the morning. I go to really early. I see all these patients. But when I see people that they're only in their 30s and 40s, they already have all kinds of issues, high blood pressure, this and that, diabetes, all those things, obesity. And I said, you need to create consciousness, self-consciousness, that if you don't take care of yourself now, when you get older, you're going to be sicker, and you're going to have somebody else take care of you. And that's not going to be very pleasant. So if you can, little by little, educate those people in terms of that, you have to be careful because, you don't want to tell people what to do.
Right.
But on the other hand, you do want to be clear that it is what it is.
It's also, we often talk about in behavioral health, generational trauma, right? Our parents' generation passes it down to us and we pass it down to our kids. And it's almost educating the parents so that they can get in regular practice to bring their children to primary care, bringing their children just for healthy checkups, because when those children become adults, it'll become natural habit and they will take their children to make sure that they make their health care a priority. I want to talk about bringing equality, though, equitable care, regardless of socioeconomic status within our communities, because I think for so long, the privileged and those who have commercial insurance, they go to the doctor's office, they're really beautiful, they're really nice. And, the stigma about those who are on Medicaid or Medicare is that it's not equal. Right? It's not equal. So what are you guys doing at both Happy Kids Pediatrics and Feliz Care Centers to bring equality to everyone, regardless of their race, regardless of their socioeconomic status?
I'm so glad that you bring this up, because the reality is that indeed, people think that because you're going to go to a clinic that doesn't have all this money. It's not like in the best areas in Phoenix, for example, and we serve the community that we serve. They feel that they're going to have an ugly looking office or not well taken care of, and they're not going to get the best care. But we're here to prove them otherwise. We want to have beautiful offices. We want to also, by all means, first of all, is give the good service. Good service, the best service anybody can give, whether you do have the ability to pay or not, and the respect, by all means. Everybody wants to be respected. And, and no matter how much money or what level of education you have, everybody wants to be respected. And I think that's how they do respond the best. And we do have all the ways of canalizing or, channeling all these people to the right specialist if they need if that's what they need. And so I think we strive to provide a better service each and every time. I mean, that's very important to us for them to feel that they're not being treated as a second-class citizen. They're not going to a second-class clinic, but rather, a clinic that is at the par, with all these other, clinics that are, where the people have, quote unquote, the best insurances and they make all this money. Our goal, I don't know if people believe it or not, but it's not all about making money, but provide the service. Somebody my age, I feel like we all like money, but to me, it's not my priority. To me, believe it or not, is give the service and give not just the service, but a good service. And so, we strive to that constantly. And I'm hoping that, we're making a difference. I mean, we see a lot of patients now, and we want to get bigger and better, not just bigger for the sake of getting bigger, but better in terms of providing the services to kids and even adults as well.
I've learned a lesson since I've kind of jumped into healthcare. And, what I have learned is that if you provide really great service, and that's not something you fake, because people can feel that. They can feel authenticity. But Exactly. If your heart is in it and you care about each and every person, like I do, who walks into my art studio each and every day, if you make that your first priority, money follows, right?
Exactly.
And then what I've also learned is then you can take that money and you can build more services to provide more services to other people.
Correct.
And I've really found that to be a business model, right? Care about the people first, deliver the goods, money will follow. You can take that money to expand, to provide those services to more people when you know what you're doing is working and it's having a good impact. I want to ask you, though, what do you say to the mother? Because primary care deals with no-shows, right? Cancellations. I think all healthcare does, right? What do you say to the mom or to the parents out there who are saying, oh, gosh, I don't even have the $50 right now to go and do my copay. You're healthy? We don't need to go. Because they're worried about the $50. They're worried about making those copays, just going even for a healthy checkup, right? Uh-huh. and they see that and they're like, no, we're healthy. We don't need to go today. What do you say to those parents?
Well, yeah, you have to create your priorities. First of all, let me just tell you that when you were talking about, the amount of money will follow and all of that, I was thinking that, yes, you have to have the passion by all means. The passion is the most important thing. And I always every one of my patients I get to see, I always tell them, what is your passion?
Yes.
I always tell them, from little kids to older people, because some people live up to 60, 70, 80, and they never find their passion.
No.
And I always tell them, you need to find your passion. And then when you do have your passion, then you work, and it doesn't really matter how much money you make because you're happy to go to work. But in any case, mentioning, bringing what you just asking about what do we do with these people? Well, we try to be understanding as much as we can possibly be. By all means, we are probably one of the few clinics, and I don't know if I want to say this in public, but the reality is that we're one of the few clinics that we don't send anybody to collection. We don't have a collection agency. If the people don't pay, well, there might be a time when, if they're abusing the system, we might tell them that we can't see them. But the reality is that we see everybody. And we never, if they can't pay, well, they can't pay. There's nothing we can do about it, But we never deny the service to anybody, first of all. Two, we make them understand that how important it is to have, for them to come to a regular, well visit. Because the reality is that that's what it prevents them from eventually going to an emergency room, to an urgent care, where it's going to be even worse for them.
Right.
So the good thing about, some of these services that most of the access plans, they do have actually transportation. Some of them, they don't realize that they can actually call an Uber or a taxi, whatever, and they will take them. They call back when they are done, and they can take them back to their houses. And there are so many services that are out there available. And we try to make them aware of all of those services, so they don't keep missing their appointments. That's one thing. And then, since I'm sure you were going to bring it up, I figured that the behavioral health is so important.
Yes, I was just going to talk to you. I was just thinking to myself, I want to talk about behavioral health because it is a place where, thank goodness, we have evolved in healthcare to realize primary care doesn't just live in this space and behavioral health and mental health over here, right?
Not at all.
Because for decades, they were treated as these two totally separate entities. Oh, you have mental health, like you're not actually physiological, feeling a pain here or pain here. Oh, we can't help you with that. And I love that there is now this synergy and there's this merger, that these two spheres are now interconnected now. And they really do. The rings connect within each other.
They do.
Because Roya Health is now a partner, right, to the services that you guys are providing at Happy Kids. Because you've noticed that there is a link, that there is a need between behavioral health, mental health, and also primary care.
By all means, I think the best medicine always has been, creating what's called multidisciplinary care. And the multidisciplinary care is very well structured in hospitals, where you go and you come for, let's say, dehydration, and then you get to see an intensivist, and you get to see you have high blood pressure, you get to see a cardiologist, or you have a heart problem, you have a GI problem, you get to see a gastroenterologist. That multidisciplinary care does exist in the hospitals, but didn't exist in the outpatient settings. And now that behavioral health has come into the role, it's important to make sure that that's the case, because to me, in my opinion, almost, I don't know what percentage, 6, 7 out of 10 people have some sort of issues, mental, emotional problems. I think we all do. We all have to a degree, right? We all do. Some of them are more obvious than to others. And some of them, it affects them, the daily activities, daily life in more than one way, which can be devastating. Some people get over it and some people don't. And some people, when they just don't, there should be a plan, a system to help somehow, because there are so many ways that can be done for these people to get over the hump and to get better. And I'm so glad that we're integrating, we have actually for the last 3 years done this. We want to continue to expand and do better on having people that so they can see a counselor, or they can, see a psychologist, or they can create things like what you're creating, which I think is great. People, sometimes you've probably already found that some people have found that they have this passion for the art that they didn't realize they did. And some of them are really, really good at it.
Very.
And then a lot of the problems dissipate.
Correct.
Constantly. And I think it's like phenomenal. I'm actually excited, to be sincere and not being totally honest, about the fact that we now, in some of our offices, we actually have right there and then a person that can give them the proper guidance and make them feel better. It's not about just sending them to a psychologist or psychiatrist anywhere, but rather these are patients that we get to see them. We have a constant, contact with them, and even through the people that are seeing them.
I think, too, the important aspect of integration is that the doctors can all communicate with each other. Because when primary lived over here and behavioral health and mental health lived over here, sometimes there isn't communication between those two spheres.
Always.
And so now with integrated care, especially when it's within the same brick and mortar, you have your primary care physicians being able to talk to therapists and counselors on the behavioral health side, that those two can share files. They can communicate with each other and saying, hey, I'm seeing that they're food insecure, they're home, they're housing insecure. Those things cause health issues, which could impact their primary care visits, right?
Oh,
and I think the communication is it increases the level of care and allows us to deliver better health care to that same patient.
By all means, listen, two of the biggest challenges in medicine, whether it's in children or in adults, is I always tell them, what the two biggest challenges are in kids are the headaches and stomach aches, abdominal pains. Because those are subjective pains, Somebody comes in and tells you, my stomach is hurting all this time, whatever. And somebody comes in and says, I always have a headache or that kind of a thing. And those two represent a big challenge. And a lot of those, when you really are interested in the patient, find out that a good number of them are emotional. I'm not saying that each one of them. I'm just saying a good number of them. And so therefore, you start inquiring, you start, asking people, and then you realize that, they worry about this, they worry about that. They develop peptic diseases. They have, they don't get a good sleep. I always tell people, let me tell you one thing. Do you sleep last night? And they'll say no. I say, that because you were thinking about a particular problem. They'll say yes. I say, I promise you one thing. Tonight you'll be thinking about the same thing. You didn't solve the problem last night, so you're not going to solve it tonight. So you just don't think about that.
Yeah, it's so true, though.
So it's a system. But, I love what I do. I love, and I think I'd like to share with all my providers, with all of our doctors that we have in mid-levels, to make sure that we do, care for the patient. And I think, like you said, when you do that, patients can see it, can feel it. It makes a big difference. They're even more willing to take the help that we're able to provide, by sending them to a behavioral health, clinic and whatnot. And what you're doing, Brandon, I think it's amazing. I really congratulate you. So, when I came into your studio, and I'm thinking like, oh my God, this guy is amazing. Yeah, that's cool. I like it.
Thank you. I love, and here's what I love, and I've learned because I just had dreams about leaving a career of news right after 22 years, and people often look at me and they're like, hey, you were a news anchor,
Yeah.
for 22 years, and now you have an art studio, and you're we're not open to the public, and that's a commitment that I made when I opened this, is that we're not just open to the general public for people to come in and have a good time, because I wanted this to be special for behavioral health. I wanted this to be special because I knew what art did to me by allowing me to express non-verbally how I was feeling. Because I think we have to get to a place in understanding, especially with youth and many men, right? Mm-hmm. Is that oftentimes just sitting down with a stranger as a therapist and getting to them to open up that frontal lobe, it's next to impossible, right? They're very closed off. And so what art and music allows you to do is open it up. And I've seen it happen to me in real time. I see these kids share more with me than they do with their therapist, right?
Mm-hmm. It's a challenge, but
it's challenging.
But it's a good challenge.
But right? It's a good. I love it. I love seeing. I just love people smiling and having a good time, because Dr. Carrazco, I believe what has been missing from clinics what has been missing, because listen, let's be honest. Who wants to go to a health clinic, right? That's always been the thing. Who just wants to go, right? And my whole thing was, we got to bring joy. Like, what if we bring joy to mental health? What if we bring joy to healthcare as a piece of a pie? And I think sometimes where we get these people with this God mentality is, I can cure anybody, I can fix anybody, when really it takes a village, right? Mm-hmm. If we look at healthcare as a pie chart and we all play a role and we take a piece of the pie, well, if we're feeding somebody every little piece of the pie, we make a whole pie and we make a whole person. And so my whole, my piece of the pie, and I tell people, I can't just cure anybody just with art and music. I said, but I can play a piece of the pie to help them in that way. And then you can take another piece of the pie and we can feed this person a whole pie to make them whole.
Somebody said at one point that we all have at least a piece of poets. We're
yes.
all poets. And
yes.
We're all, singing. We all like to sing and hear a nice, beautiful poem or a nice, beautiful verse. And I think it's all within us. I think, that's why this is not bound to fail at all. It's bound to be more and more successful because you're basically tapping into something that has not really been tapped into so much. And it's been actually relegated to people, like you're saying, to do it on a willing, a thing, or because they even pay for it. Right. And when it can be done through, through a way that they don't not only have to pay, but they actually enjoy it, and they're gonna discover themselves. And you're making a big difference, Brandon. This is amazing. You're making a big difference on the people, and that's not part of the reason. Not just trying to
thank you,
be nice to you, but you. I think what you're doing is it definitely requires congratulations. That's amazing.
Thank you. Where do you see, like, I have visions of where I want to see myself in 5 years, where we kind of grow and expand. I always tell people, it's like, if you're a doctor, right? You're a doctor and you create a modality, right? You're seeing something that you created and you see it working in your little bubble. And then you're like, well, I want more people to experience this. Like, I have a little experiment here and it's working. So how can we get more people? For you, Happy Kids and, Feliz Care Centers, where do you want to go? Because at one point you started making house calls. About 6-7 months later, you open up your first brick and mortar, and now you have 7 clinics here in the Valley. Where is that next step for you? Where is that next step of growth for you?
To me, the most important thing is to maintain the element of why I started in the first place.
The why.
So I don't, because to me, as I mentioned, I'm not being a hypocrite. We all like to be okay, but on the other hand, by all means, money is not my priority at this point in my life, and it's never been. I want Happy Kids. I want Feliz Care to get to a point where we can basically expose it or give it to a bunch of people, not just here in the Valley, but other states, even if needed to, because I think that's going to make a big difference. I think, yesterday I went for just a regular checkup to Mayo Clinic, and I've been reading some of their history. These were 2 amazing brothers, who opened up, who started Mayo Clinic. And now, I'll be sincere, you go to Mayo Clinic to go to any other hospital, you can tell the difference. The service is incredible.
Yeah.
It's so directed towards, a customer service, to make people happy, to make people pleasant, to make it a good experience, to come to a clinic. And of course, on top of that, being understanding. Mayo Clinic to me is like, wow, it's an amazing clinic.
It's a gold standard.
It's a gold standard. And that's what I like to make with Happy Kids. I don't want to be like any other clinic that they're just there to open a clinic and make a lot of money and everybody's unhappy, so the patients are going to be unhappy. And I want to provide this service so we can, so our community, and not just our community. I mean, we see all kinds of races, and we don't have any issues with anybody. That they can go there and say, wow, this is a nice clinic. They treat you well. If you need help, they get you. If they need a referral, they get you within 2-3 days, as opposed to 2-3 weeks. They do not ignore you. You are not just a number, right. But you actually know you. The doctors know you, know your name. They treat you well. They greet you. And as you said, they don't have any issues with coming to the practice, to be seen to do what we need to do, which is the preventive medicine, so we can get old and not be depending on so much on other people but ourselves.
I think the way to create a gold standard is this, is that there are some people who open these clinics because they want to make a lot of money. Okay. So I ask them, and you go into them, they're run down, whatever. You know what I say to them? Would you take your child here?
Exactly.
Right. Would you take your child here? Would you take your family members and trust your family members with your team of doctors? And I think that that's really a barometer, right? If you're the owner and you're the founder of a company, and if the answer is, well, it's like, no, my kids go to another doctor. What are you doing? Right?
Exactly.
No. We should be providing that same level of care. And when you could say, absolutely, all of my family comes here. Absolutely, they all come here.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. One of the things that makes me very happy and flattered, but without trying to maintain some degree of humility.
It's okay. It's okay to pat yourself on the back when you're doing good.
A lot of the doctors that I know myself, that they're friend of ours, they have some of them their own clinics. They bring me their kids to me, and just about almost everyone in the clinics that they have kids, even their moms or whatever. We were talking about that yesterday. They all want to see me. They want to see Dr. Carrazco, and I tell my wife, that's what makes it all worth it.
Yes.
Makes it all worth it. And I want every one of my providers to feel that same enthusiasm, because I always tell people, listen, when we hired them and whatnot, the doctors and whatnot, we always tell them, listen, you have to see the patient at 8 o'clock in the morning. The one that you see at 5 o'clock in the morning, you have to 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm sorry, you have to see them with the same enthusiasm that you saw the one at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yes,
they're not the problem that you're tired, that you saw already 20, 25 patients.
Yes,
you have to see them with the same enthusiasm. Give them time and be patient with them, and they're gonna feel it. And they're gonna be happy, and they're gonna be happy because not only just your knowledge, but because you were nice and pleasant. Everybody likes to be treated well.
Yes, and I my team as well. When we're on our third art session, of that day, and we have 15 to 17 folks in there, all behavioral health, you are pouring your energy, right? You're pouring your heart and soul into them. And, I say we got to turn that switch on even for the last class. I said, because we are not allowed to have a bad day at Art of Our Soul.
Correct.
We do not have bad days there. And it's important because when you're dealing with people with behavioral health or mental health, any kind of health situation, they can feel your energy. And if you have bad energy or you just say something in a tone, it can ruin their day and send them spiraling.
Exactly. It's the same way you can make a difference for the good, you can also make a difference for the bad.
Yes.
You have to be aware of that. Good words have so much power.
Yes.
The powering of the words.
Eye contact is everything.
You should know better, right? You're new, so you know how the wording, how you say things makes the world of difference, right?
World of difference. And body language. Body language is so much too. Yeah. I've been to doctors, honestly, they're just like this. Don't even make eye contact, right? They're just writing. And then I go to, I recently was at another doctor, dealing with a health issue that is a rare health issue. And, after 5 years, I broke down crying in this doctor's office. And he looked at me and he held my hand and he goes, I need you to not give up hope. Don't give up hope yet. I want to experiment and I want to try. And let me tell you, if it doesn't work, we're going to try again. And that was the first time in the 5 years that I've been dealing with this health issue where a doctor he slid everything away. And he just sat there and he looked at me and he held my hand and said, do not give up hope. And that moment, I said, thank you. Thank you, God, for leading me to this man. I said, because that just made the world a difference. And guess what? I finally had felt hope again.
That's cool.
Because you can actually see really nice, a doctor in his eyes and you can see that he was truly empathetic, to what I had been going through. And that made the world a difference.
Of course. I mean, we're in a position that we can make a big difference on people. One of my also biggest flattering moments have been, and proud moments, is when I have so many of my patients, parents, that they tell me that their son, their daughter, they want to go to medical school because they, I represent to them, a role model. And I'm like, seriously? I mean, I don't.
You don't
that's
see
like
it that
so great.
way. Yeah, that's good.
But it
That's
makes me so
humble.
happy. You know, that's
Yeah.
very humbling, very humbling. And I said, wow, my God, you know, but it's cool. I mean, I think we're in a position that we're so privileged to have.
Yes.
And we should not take it for granted.
Yes.
And we should not really put so much, you know, emphasis in our ego. I always tell people, listen, if you feel like you want to go somewhere else, you want to do this, you want to do whatever we have to do, I'm never going to be upset because you got a second opinion on this and that, and you didn't like it, you came back to me, and I'm saying, well, you stay with that doctor. Not at all. From me, you'll find the understanding. I'm not that important. The only important person is your kid. It's you, not me. I mean, I'm cool. And so that's very important to basically communicate with them that they are the most important part of the equation.
Yes. Dr. Carrazco, it's been a pleasure. It's been a real pleasure to have you here to learn more about you and the work that you're doing. And just a huge thank you for stepping into a space and not only providing great healthcare to folks, but also providing that healthcare to our underserved communities.
Thank you so much. And thank you for being part of this too. I'm looking forward to work with you.
It's going to be great.
Right on.
It'll be great. Dr. Carrazco with Happy Kids Pediatrics and Feliz Care Centers. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Escaping Rock Bottom, the podcast. This podcast is inspired by Molina Healthcare.